The moment a narcissist begins to lose control feels almost like watching a storm fade the instant the winds calm down. That's exactly what happens when they sense you no longer care. There are no reactions left, no fear to feed on, no control to hold on to, only silence. And that silence shakes them far more than any outburst ever could. When a narcissist realizes your indifference, the first thing they experience is the loss of control. For them, control isn't just a desire, it's the very core of how they engage with others. From the very beginning, they observe you closely. They learn what makes you happy, what hurts you, what triggers a reaction. They build a psychological blueprint designed specifically for you. They rely on praise, guilt, fear, charm, and even silence as tools to manipulate and maintain emotional dominance. This isn't genuine love. It's possession disguised as affection. And once you begin to detach mentally, emotionally, and even spiritually, the power they once held starts to fall apart. For a narcissist, control equals validation. If they can make you chase them, cry over them, argue with them, or even hate them intensely, they feel alive. Your reactions fuel their ego. Your confusion reinforces their sense of superiority. As long as they can provoke you, they believe they still matter. But when you stop reacting, when you stop explaining, defending, or justifying, when your silence becomes steady and unshaken, that illusion of control disappears. And it doesn't fade gently. It collapses violently within their mind. They often sense this shift long before you think they do. Narcissists are highly aware of power dynamics, especially when that power begins slipping away. They may pretend not to notice. They may act indifferent, but beneath that mask, there is panic. Your detachment confuses them. They begin to question why you're no longer begging, checking in, arguing, or showing emotional distress. They replay past conversations and analyze your new calmness. For someone addicted to control, that stillness is deeply unsettling. At this stage, they may try to regain their footing. They'll say things meant to provoke you, perhaps something harsh, passive-aggressive, or deliberately hurtful, something that once guaranteed a reaction. They're testing to see if any emotional connection still remains. But when you remain unaffected, they feel exposed and vulnerable. Two states they work tirelessly to avoid. Their identity is built on being untouchable, in control, admired or feared, but never ignored. Indifference from someone they once controlled signals that the game is over. This loss of control might cause a form of reflection, but not in a healthy way. They won't genuinely examine their behavior or acknowledge their role in pushing you away. Instead, they'll question how they lost the ability to keep you emotionally hooked. They may label you as cold, disloyal, or ungrateful. They cannot accept that the issue was never your devotion. It was their misuse of it. To avoid facing this truth, they often shift into defensive behaviors, acting as though they were the one who walked away, rewriting the narrative to protect their ego. In reality, they didn't lose ownership of you because they never truly had you. They only had access to your emotional energy, and despite the turmoil they feel internally, they will often act as if everything is perfectly fine. Narcissists are performers. They may suddenly showcase new relationships, achievements, or an exaggerated sense of happiness, hoping to trigger jealousy or doubt within you. But this is merely a performance, an attempt to regain control, not directly over you, but over how they are perceived. Since they can no longer control you, they try to control the story. What they fail to understand is that when someone truly stops caring, they have already grieved the relationship. They have processed the disappointment, the false hope, and the emotional harm. What remains is clarity, and clarity marks the end of manipulation. So the narcissist doesn't just lose a person, they lose the illusion that they ever had real control. And for them, that is one of the most painful losses imaginable. When a narcissist recognizes that you no longer care, one of their most common responses is either explosive anger or cold withdrawal. Both reactions are defense mechanisms meant to regain dominance and punish you for detaching emotionally. This behavior isn't random. It's deeply rooted in their fragile ego and their constant need to remain at the center of your emotional world, whether through affection, fear, or conflict. Narcissistic rage is not ordinary anger. It is intense, disproportionate, and often unpredictable. It stems from a deep sense of rejection or abandonment. The moment you stop reacting, stop chasing, and stop engaging in their patterns, they experience what psychologists call a narcissistic injury, a blow to their carefully constructed self-image. That injury doesn't just hurt, it burns. Instead of processing that discomfort, they project it outward. You become the target. They may lash out with cruel words, irrational accusations, or attempts to tear down your sense of self. They might attack your identity, your progress, or your worth. Their goal isn't just to hurt you, it's to shock you back into emotional engagement. They don't care whether you cry, argue, or defend yourself. As long as you react, they regain a sense of influence. Your emotions confirm their importance. They thrive on this toxic dynamic, where chaos is mistaken for passion and manipulation is mistaken for connection. If their anger fails to provoke you, they often switch strategies. Moving from intensity to detachment, cold silence becomes their next tool. This silence isn't peaceful. It's intentional and punishing. It's meant to make you feel invisible, unworthy, or abandoned. They create an emotional void, hoping it will draw you back toward them. They may ignore your messages, act as if you don't exist, or disappear entirely, only to return when they sense your emotional defenses weakening. This silence is not about reflection, it's about control. It's an emotional freeze designed to trigger insecurity. They believe that if they withdraw attention long enough, you will return just to feel something again. This cycle of rage and silence creates confusion. It can make you question yourself, wondering if you were too harsh or if you made a mistake. That confusion is intentional. It keeps you emotionally off balance, making it easier for them to regain control. But true detachment is strong. When you genuinely stop caring, their anger becomes noise and their silence becomes empty space. You begin to see through their behavior. You understand that neither their outbursts nor their absence are about you. They are about their struggle to maintain relevance. And that realization is deeply frustrating for them. Whether through loud aggression or calculated withdrawal, they are reacting to one truth they cannot accept. They are losing their emotional hold over you. For someone whose identity depends on controlling how others feel about them, this is terrifying. So they intensify their efforts, becoming louder, harsher, colder, or more distant, hoping you will break. When a narcissist realizes your indifference, their instinct is not acceptance, it is desperation. That desperation drives them to manipulate again, but this time it looks different. It's no longer subtle or charming. It becomes frantic, disorganized, and driven by fear. They know you are slipping away, and they will use every tactic they can to pull you back in. This is when love bombing may return, guilt tripping increases, and they begin portraying themselves as the victim. Suddenly, they appear kinder, more attentive, and emotionally aware. They may say things like, "I've been thinking about us," or act as though they've had a sudden realization about their behavior. But this is not genuine growth. It's another attempt to regain control. Or they might say, "I didn't realize how deeply I hurt you." These aren't genuine confessions rooted in growth or accountability. They are calculated attempts to reset the emotional bond and make you question your decision to walk away. They'll bring up memories that once meant something to you, trying to stir feelings of nostalgia. They may offer apologies, not because they feel true remorse, but because they want a response from you. Every move is deliberate and they're hoping you'll take the bait. If love bombing doesn't succeed, they quickly shift toward guilt. This is where they remind you of everything they claim to have done for you. They twist the past, exaggerate their sacrifices, and minimize the harm they caused. Phrases like, "After everything I did for you, this is how you repay me," become common. The intention is to make you question your emotions. They want you to wonder if you overreacted, if you were too harsh, if maybe, just maybe, they deserve another chance. It's emotional manipulation disguised as sentiment. They understand how powerful guilt can be, especially when used against someone who once cared deeply. Then comes the role of the victim. This is when the narcissist begins to present themselves as the one who was wronged. They may tell mutual friends, family members, or even post on social media that you abandoned them, that you became cold, that they were trying while you walked away. It's not enough for them to lose control over you. They also want to control how others perceive you. They seek sympathy. They want an audience to validate their version of events and applaud their performance. In some cases, they also begin searching for new supply. Someone else to admire them, to boost their ego, to step into the role you left behind. But even while pursuing someone new, they may continue trying to pull you back in because your detachment still feels like an unresolved wound. Throughout all of this, there is a strong sense of urgency behind their behavior. The manipulation becomes heavier and more intense because they can sense your emotional door closing. Narcissists depend on reactions. When you're angry, upset, or even defending yourself, you're still giving them attention. But when you stop reacting entirely, they begin to unravel. It's like trying to revive a fading flame while everything around them is falling apart. They panic, they scramble. They become reckless. They may even cycle through all their tactics within a single day. Love bombing in the morning, guilt tripping by midday, and passive-aggressive silence by evening. These last-minute manipulations aren't about love, They're about survival. It's emotional survival for someone whose identity is tied to how others respond to them. They don't know who they are without an audience, without someone to influence, without someone emotionally connected to them. Your indifference exposes this truth. It forces them to face a reflection they cannot tolerate, a reflection of their lack of real connection, the emptiness behind their charm, and the reality that their tactics no longer work. So they push harder. Not because they truly care about you, but because they can't accept that you've stopped caring about them. When a narcissist realizes you no longer care, they experience a kind of internal collapse that most people never witness. On the outside, they may seem composed or even unaffected, but internally, their ego begins to break down. What you're seeing isn't just disappointment or hurt, it's something much deeper and more fragile. Their entire identity is built around a carefully crafted image of superiority, control, and importance. They survive on validation and emotional energy from others. So when you stop reacting, stop seeking their approval, and stop engaging in their drama, it's like cutting off their source of supply. Without that supply, their sense of self begins to crumble. This collapse doesn't appear as quiet reflection. It shows up as confusion, anger, and desperation. Narcissists depend on illusions. They believe they are smarter, more attractive, more significant than others. These beliefs are not grounded in reality. They are defenses against deep insecurity. They need others to mirror those illusions back to them. They need admiration, fear, or envy. When someone close to them detaches, that reflection disappears. Suddenly, they are confronted with a truth they have been avoiding, the possibility that they are not as powerful or essential as they believed. This realization is extremely painful, but they cannot process it in a healthy or vulnerable way. Instead of expressing sadness or regret, they react with anger or withdrawal. They may attempt to rebuild their ego by blaming you, telling themselves that you were ungrateful, disloyal, or undeserving. That blame is not just about hurting you, it's about protecting themselves from the truth that their manipulation failed. Because if they accept the reality that someone saw through them and walked away without looking back, it completely shatters the illusion they've built. That level of emotional exposure is unbearable for someone whose identity depends on appearing untouchable. To cope with this, they often rewrite the story in their mind. In their version, they weren't abandoned. They were the one who left. You weren't strong. You were cold and heartless. This narrative allows them to preserve their sense of superiority. They may even share this version with others, using it to gain sympathy and maintain admiration. They cannot accept that you walked away because you saw them clearly. That clarity threatens their entire emotional structure. Sometimes this internal collapse leads them to obsess over you, not out of love, but out of a need to regain control. They want to prove that they can still influence you, that they can still pull you back. They might monitor your life from a distance, watching for signs that you miss them, that you're struggling, or that you haven't fully moved on. Your peace becomes evidence of their failure, and your silence becomes louder than any argument you ever had. In their world, your detachment feels like defeat. If they can't provoke you, they feel erased. And for a narcissist, emotional irrelevance is one of the most terrifying experiences possible. That's why this collapse feels so intense for them. It's not just about losing a relationship. It's about losing the fantasy of who they believe themselves to be. It forces them to confront an emptiness they've spent years hiding behind charm, control, and manipulation. And when someone walks away unaffected, unmoved, and emotionally free, that emptiness becomes impossible to ignore. When all their usual tactics fail and they realize you truly no longer care, they often begin searching for a new source of supply. This is not random. It's a survival response. Narcissists don't just want attention. They depend on it to maintain their sense of worth. Your indifference becomes a mirror they cannot face. So instead of dealing with rejection, they turn outward in search of validation. They begin looking for someone new to admire them, to feed their ego, to provide the emotional energy they've lost from you. This usually happens quickly. Narcissists dislike emotional emptiness, and your silence creates a void that threatens their identity. They don't process the end of relationships in a healthy way. They don't reflect or heal, they replace. They search for someone who is open, empathetic, and perhaps vulnerable. Someone they can impress, charm, and eventually influence. It's not about genuine connection, it's about control and emotional supply. The new person is rarely chosen for compatibility. They are chosen because they can provide attention, admiration, and reaction. The very things the narcissist no longer receives from you. Often, the narcissist presents themselves as a victim to this new person. They share stories of being mistreated, of giving everything and being left behind. This gains sympathy, which quickly turns into emotional investment. And then the cycle begins again: attention, flattery, and idealization, until eventually the mask begins to slip. For a while, though, the narcissist feels powerful again. They are no longer facing the emotional wound caused by your indifference. Instead, they cover it with a new distraction. During this stage, they may even display this new connection in subtle ways, through mutual acquaintances, social media posts, or indirect comments designed to provoke a reaction from you. They want to make you feel jealous. They want reassurance that they still have some kind of emotional impact on you. If you respond with anger or sadness, they feel validated. In their mind, that becomes proof they still matter. But if you remain silent, they feel the sting of your indifference all over again. Instead of facing that discomfort, they double down on displaying their new happiness. They try to convince themselves and others that they've moved on successfully. What they fail to understand is that jumping to a new source of attention doesn't fix anything. It only delays the inevitable. The pattern repeats itself because the root issue, their inability to form genuine, mutual emotional connections, remains unresolved. Eventually, the charm fades, the mask begins to crack, and the new person starts to notice the same behaviors that pushed you away. And once again, the narcissist finds themselves in the same place: frustrated, disappointed, and desperate for validation. It becomes a cycle of constant searching, but never true fulfillment. Even while chasing new attention, they may still keep an eye on you from afar. Narcissists often hold onto a mental list of past partners, people who once provided emotional supply. They might suddenly reach out, acting as if nothing ever happened, or send a vague message just to test your reaction. If you respond, even slightly, it signals to them that the door might still be open. If you remain silent, it reminds them again of what they've lost. This endless search for new attention isn't empowerment, it's a sign of emotional instability. They can't sit with themselves, they can't tolerate silence, so they keep reaching outward, trying to avoid what's within. Your detachment exposed a wound they refuse to face. Instead of healing it, they chase distractions. What they gain is temporary, what they lose is real. When a narcissist truly realizes you don't care anymore, a difficult truth begins to surface for them: they are no longer in control. Control is at the core of how they operate. It isn't always obvious or aggressive. Sometimes it hides behind charm, silence, calculated kindness, or subtle guilt. But beneath every word, every action, and every emotional push or pull lies one goal: control over how you feel, how you respond, and how you see them. When you detach, when your emotions no longer respond to their manipulation, they are forced to face something they cannot influence: the reality of their fading power. This loss of control doesn't just frustrate them, it unsettles them deeply. Narcissists struggle with uncertainty. They depend on knowing they can trigger you with a look, a message, a lie, or even a half-hearted apology. They rely on stirring confusion, doubt, or hope whenever it benefits them. When those methods stop working, it feels like everything beneath them is unstable. Their usual tactics, once effective, now fall flat. There's no reaction in your eyes, no argument to pull you back in, no tears to feed their ego. You're calm, detached, and focused elsewhere. And in their world, that kind of silence represents a loss greater than any breakup. They may attempt to regain control in both subtle and obvious ways. They might provoke you, sending messages that mix compliments with criticism. They may bring up past mistakes, present themselves as misunderstood, or suggest that you'll never find someone like them. Every word, every move is carefully designed to make you question yourself, to trigger some form of emotional response. Because to them, even your anger is proof that they still matter. Silence, however, is something they struggle to handle. It removes their leverage. It shows them they are no longer the center of your emotional world. And for someone who thrives on being the focus of attention, being reduced to background noise is unbearable. When control is lost, some narcissists begin to spiral. Not always in obvious ways. Sometimes they turn that need for control inward, trying to regain power through obsessive behaviors. Watching your social media, following your life quietly, gathering information through shared connections. They may not say anything, but their silence doesn't mean they've moved on. It means they're observing, waiting, hoping for a moment of weakness. They're looking for signs, any indication that they can step back in and regain what they lost.